Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and I know what you're probably thinking. It's been a while since I've done a spreadsheet video that wasn't the meta tier list. And it's actually been a while that I've done one of these because I've been behind on updating them. There's a lot of pages, there's a lot of sheets, there's a lot of information, and I've been working slowly and quietly in the background, upgrading this champ building guide, upgrading the progress guide, upgrading the ABX guide, which I'm going to make a separate video about, but it looks gorgeous now. And so for today, I want to focus on the character building guide because it's been overhauled to include the now up to 66, that's right, 66 tier 3able and awakenable or transcendable characters. Now, I'm sort of leaning towards focusing on those characters with the character building guide because there's so many of them now that the bulk of your resources and the bulk of your gameplay can actually comprise almost entirely of these characters, because even if you don't necessarily have them at tier 3, you may have them built up at tier 2, building up to tier 3, or building up to being awakened, right? So you might just have yourself a tier 2 Moonstone that's not yet awakened or not yet transcended, but you're still playing with her. You still want to know how to play with her. So that is the goal of the character building guide, is to basically give you the cheat sheet and the fastest way to figure out how to get a character, how far you can build them up, their attack type, whether it's energy or physical attack, the best ISO 8 set, what kind of obelisk you want to give them, and then what best CTP or second best CTP, you have two options, and then what their rotation would be with an obelisk, what their rage rotation would be, because it's a little bit different. All the proc rotations would be the same for whether it's an obelisk, an energy, or a destruction, and then what skill you probably want to proc on or sort of land your big damage boost. Now, I'd made a separate video about 3 weeks ago, about a month ago, called How to Play Any Character Better. It's this video right here on the right, and I encourage you to go and watch that one if you want to know sort of how I break down the rotations for different characters and how players figure out what the best rotation is for a character. That's not what I'm going to be talking about in today's video. I'll actually link this video in the card on YouTube, so you can just click that little eye symbol in the corner, the top right-hand corner. But essentially, what I just want to do in this video is explain what this is. I've already sort of gone over it, but I'll explain it in a little bit more depth so you can read this and understand it. And then I will discuss, some of the, all the bolded characters that have been added to this and give you guys some examples. So, starting at the top, I've isolated all of the Awakening and Tier 3 characters. So that's why you're going to see them separated from everyone else. And of course, their highest tier is mentioned there. I don't say Transcended, I just say Awakening because it's just easier to say than Transcended, and it just makes more sense to me because that's what we started with. That's what it was originally called. It was originally just Awakening. So yeah, all the other characters, in case you're wondering, in case you want to know, are underneath. So you just scroll a little bit, there's a little bit of a gap, then you just scroll down, you will find every other character in the game. I haven't duplicated these characters for whether they're tier 2 or tier 3. There's none of that stuff, just the characters. These characters down here have not been updated entirely. I haven't gone through and done everything. I did a few here and there when I could, like Green Goblin, but for the most part, the vast majority of my efforts have been focused on updating this, including the soon-to-be characters coming out. So you can see here, it's kind of funny, but I just enjoy doing it. Gambit and Cable, for example, right? We know Cable's getting a tier 3. We know Gambit's getting an Awakening. But that's pretty much all I know. Everything else here I wrote as pending. Now, probably the best ISO 8 set is going to be Power of Angry Hulk, maybe Overdrive. There's a 50-50 chance I was going to be right, but it's better to err on the side of caution. It's better to just wait. And this goes along with a piece of advice that I find myself giving out a lot, but it's really important to repeat it. Don't invest in characters. If you can wait, and if you don't have materials that are expiring, don't invest in characters before an update comes out. Even if you know Gambit's about to get a uniform, there's always a chance that they completely goof up the uniform. I mean, I don't want this to happen, of course, but there's always a chance that they goof up the uniform, that he's terrible, or he's just not good enough, or he's only usable for like one thing, and that one thing that he's usable for, you don't give a crap about, and then you're just stuck with all these resources that you've invested into a character that you don't even want to buy his uniform for, or spend the CCF to get him to tier 3 in the case of Cable or whatever. So never, ever, ever build up a character before an update. I see this every update, people asking me, like, what's the best CTP for Gambit? What's the best CTP for Cable? The answers right now are energy and energy. Rage is almost as good. It's basically as good as energy for Cable, but, whatever. But that's not necessarily going to be the answer. And, giving you that information now is dangerous, because then you might equip a CTP or swap a CTP, and then turns out that I was wrong, or whoever else gave you the advice was wrong, and then you're stuck. So this is important to use as a guide. Again, this is just my personal opinion, of course, generic PSA. This is not the only way you can build a character. You can do whatever you want. If you're a PvP focused player, you're going to see that for the most part, I've written proc for basically every character, besides ones that I think are just absolutely terrible offensively. But of course, if you're a mega PvP player, if you're super into Alliance Conquest, then these are all just going to be invincibility obelisks, right? You're not going to have any procs. You're going to have, or the majority of them are not going to be procs. Obviously, it's just my opinion, just the way that I play the game, but that's one thing that begs repeating. Never build up a character unless you are comfortable sacrificing those resources, right? If you're totally okay with the uniform coming out, she's, X23 and Nightcrawler are perfect examples. They've had uniforms, they've each gotten a uniform, and each time they've failed to make the character better, to make the character even like near the meta, not even meta, near the meta. If you're comfortable putting those resources in now and potentially having the character remain less useful than you'd like, then build them. Otherwise, just wait. So, but these are the basic building blocks. Basically, everything you need to know about how to get a character. You have all the acquisition methods. If you scroll over to the right side, you will see the abbreviations like Shadowland selectors, which would be like bio selectors. SS would be the support shop. You have the EQ Epic Quest, HQ Heroic Quest for Wave and White Fox. DRX is Danger Room Extreme for Gambit and things like that. And then you have the abbreviations for the different ISO sets. And then we have the rotation. So this is the part that I wanted to focus on for the remainder of the video, how to read the proc information. Because if you look at it, and I actually have to still go through here and space these out, because I actually changed my mind recently, a few months ago, and I decided that I would prefer it. It looks prettier, and I think it's easier to read if the spaces are there between the skills. So essentially, each number, of course, corresponds to the specific skill that you would be pressing, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. 6 is the same for Awakening characters and Tier 3 characters, so it's just referred to as 6. I've thought about it. I haven't checked and gone through and seen if it is this way, but it makes sense to not include the Tier 3 skill when giving the rotations for Tier 3 characters. For example, like, well, Cable's there, but anyways, like Ant-Man. But for Transcended characters, you should, or I should, list the Awakening skill in the rotation, for example, Silk here or Spider-Gwen, because it's on cooldown right away. So, yeah. You'll obviously need to have a rotation that includes the Tier 3 skill when you work it in, but the Tier 3 skill gets worked in, at the end of usually it's at the end of the second rotation for most characters. For Ghost Rider, he's one of the few that can basically squeeze the Tier 3 in after his first rotation, after he does 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 once. Not specifically in that order, but because of that, I've decided to not list it here for these characters, because your first few rotations are not going to include that skill anyways for Tier 3s, but it will for Transcended characters. So yeah, the way that it works, the number corresponds to the skill, the letter C corresponds to cancel, and again, we've talked about what cancel means in that other video, so if you don't know what canceling is, how to cancel, then you should go and watch that video. And then for very few characters, it's basically only Thor for now. H, the bracket hold, means literally hold the skill down. Dakin, Sabretooth, there are a few other characters where you literally have to hold the skill down. Captain America's Tier 3. And that's basically it. Oh, sorry, there's one more abbreviation, which is DC. So someone like Loki, maybe that's not the best example, someone like Null. 6 DC. So DC would not be DC Comics, Detective Comics, it would be delayed cancel. So you have to wait a little bit. And again, it's impossible for me to list here exactly when you should wait. Like for Spider-Woman, for example, exactly how long you should wait. But you'll have to play with the character and you'll have to get used to them in order to figure that out, in order to see what that means. So I'll go ahead and show you guys Thor's rotation here. It's 3, cancel 5, 4, hold, and then 2, cancel 6. I actually did list Thor's Tier 3 skill at the end here, but you basically would do that after your second rotation. So your first rotation obviously could not include the 6th skill. So here we go, Thor versus Thanos. We're going to do a little bit of a dodge at the beginning just because, but we do 3 and then we cancel down to 5 and then we hold 4 down, and then we would do, when you can or when it's helpful, 2 and then 1 really briefly, and then we're gonna, well, and then 2 and then 1 and then 4, hold that. Then you would do 6 right at the end. And again, it takes some time to get used to. Wow, there's a lot of damage. That was stage 60. I mean, wow. He one-shot the first phase. I had to get the whistle right. Wow, that was a ton of damage on stage 60. Wow, maybe Thor should take on Thanos. I think I've done that video already, but wow, that was impressive. Very impressive. So, yeah, that's basically how you read the proc rotation. For the rage rotations in general, they are similar, but they're not always exactly the same because you can squeeze in other skills first to not only trigger your proc, but also charge up your tier 3 skill and just generally get them on cooldown. So for example, some people were questioning why I started with the third skill with Null when I had a CTP of Rage on him. That's because the third skill has a super long cooldown, so it will charge up his tier 3 faster. I can cancel it because I don't really need the damage. I don't need the iframe ignore, and there's no point in waiting to use the third skill later. So you just 3 and then quickly cancel that into 4, quickly cancel that into 5. And by that time, hopefully your rage proc has activated, and then you would do 1 cancel 6 or 1 cancel 2, depending on what you had charged up. Of course, for Null, it's completely different with his with the CTP of energy or regular proc equipped. You don't want to risk the third skill triggering the proc, so you wouldn't do it at all. You wouldn't start with the third skill at all. You would do 4 cancel 5, then you would proc on 5, hopefully, and then you would just squeeze the third in, just before doing 2 or just before doing 6. Because in that sense, you still want to charge up the skill. You still want to charge up the tier 3 by using the third skill, but you don't want it to interfere with your proc. So hopefully this type of video, this type of guide is helpful. I know that you guys want the entire guide filled out for all 240 characters. I can't promise that I'll be getting that done anytime soon, but at least I will continue to upgrade this list here with the most important, most expensive characters, so that when you make the investment in them, or if you're thinking about making the investment in them, you can come here and take a look. You could also take a look and go into the skill preview and practice, for example, and look and see, you know what, turns out Spider-Woman's rotation is kind of annoying for me. I don't really like it. I'm probably going to save my resources. Or you know what, I really enjoyed Dormammu or Odin's rotation. I think I'm going to invest in him next, and I'm going to give him this obelisk or this CTP or whatever. So yeah, hit me up in the comments down below if you guys have any questions, but hopefully this resource will help you, have a better sense of how to build your characters and then how to play with them once you've built them, so you can make the absolute most out of their builds. I was also thinking about it. I think I'm going to add an extra column here for whether the character needs a debuff lead for World Boss Ultimate, but I'll add that in sometime later. Let me know if there's anything else you think you could use here for the character building guide. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. We're very close to the update, so it's pretty hype, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.